What is going on, everyone? So in this week's video, I want to talk about something I mentioned a little bit on one of my Zion videos. I think it was my Zion Day 4 video, which I'll link to right up there. And that is the issue of self-doubt. And this is something that I don't think I really work into the videos enough because I don't think it necessarily works as well with the story of the day. But it seems like every single time I go on a trip, the first 2 to 3 days of the trip, there'll be a moment, some point during that time, where I find myself questioning, why am I here? What am I doing? Is this something that I really want to do? But then I kind of get in the swing of things, and by day 4, 5, 6, it's all good because I feel like I have enough kind of work that I've done that works out pretty well. And typically what I like to try to do is I try to harness that feeling of self-doubt and try to make it into something productive where instead of sitting there and realistically questioning why am I really here, I'll use that as motivation to go find something to point my camera at. I have to put in that extra little bit of effort, but kind of get things kickstarted, get things going, and then everything kind of falls in order. And this is something that came into play on the Death Valley trip, which I recently returned from. I will say that Death Valley is a sort of location I have kind of a love-hate relationship. It can be so absolutely beautiful at times. It can be such an amazing place to shoot photos, but it also can be one of the most frustrating places to shoot photos. So that's how it kind of felt when I was on this trip, because I felt like I was chasing the light the entire time, which is something I hate doing. I like to find that composition and kind of wait for that light, which is so much easier to do on large format. Setting up the cameras in the dark is tough. Finding subjects in the dark is tough. But on the trip to Death Valley, and I'm not going to give anything away, but I felt like I was just constantly chasing my tail, trying to find subjects and making sloppy mistakes. And so I was even dreading looking at the film. And I already got my film back. I already recorded the film reveal video, but I was dreading looking at that film because I knew that there was going to be a lot of not so great work in there. And also, since I was struggling so much trying to find subjects and trying to shoot, I didn't think that my video work was as good as it should have been. So I was also in some ways dreading putting together the videos because I felt like I wasn't going to have enough content to kind of tell a story of everything. But here's the thing. When I recorded the film reveal video, there were hardly any mistakes in there. I think at a certain point, you just kind of go into this autopilot mode. Once you kind of get that muscle memory of working with it, even in some really difficult situations, I was able to come out with some photos that I really like. I think I've scanned 6 or 7 different scenes so far. And of those, they're almost all portfolio shots, which I'm really honestly surprised by. And I think it's because I was able to kind of use that self-doubt as a motivating factor to work even harder and find even more shots. Because I had kind of written off the photos I'd taken on the first 2 or 3 days of the trip, figuring they are nothing. I need to find something I can actually work with. And that even at one point meant that I got up at 3:30 in the morning because I couldn't sleep. And I went out in the completely darkness and by headlamp wandered around until I could find a subject that really seemed like it'd make a good photo. I set up my camera in the dark, which is really hard to do. And I found a composition. I had a light that cooperated. So it was all of the issues I thought I was having. I've kind of used that as motivation to try to find a subject, which worked out really well. But this will be actually one of the more productive trips I've gone on as far as producing work that I'm really happy with. And I think it's because of that motivating factor. I think it's because of the adversity that I had faced as far as the conditions that were not really friendly for shooting large format. So I'm curious what your guys' thoughts are. I mean, do you guys, if you're going on like a week-long trip somewhere, do you have the same sort of thing where you kind of question why you're even there to begin with, and they kind of get on a roll? Or I think social media, it makes it a little bit difficult because you see people posting pictures all over and you think, oh, this person's living the dream, they're out there shooting somewhere, but what you don't realize is how much work it actually is when you get there. And one last thing, I think one of the things that's easy to take for granted, previous photos that I've taken in some of these areas like Death Valley, I go, oh, you know, there's a dune photo, there's a salt flats photo. But once I get there and I realize how much work is involved in finding the subject and having just the right conditions, it makes me appreciate that portfolio so much more. That's something I definitely appreciate after this trip to Death Valley. But I'm curious about your thoughts, curious about your experiences, so please leave that in the comments below. But I want to thank everyone for watching, and we'll see you around next week.